Hey, this is Tarence Lauchié, and I'd like to thank you for tuning in to this podcast, The Growth Exchange. This podcast was designed to curate conversation, dialogue, and monologue around all things growth. I believe that everything living has the potential to grow into its fullest and most maximal potential. So let's grow. Hey, welcome to the Growth Exchange podcast. I'm Dr. Tarence Lauchié, and this is another episode of the Growth Exchange, but this one is a solo. I've done some of those throughout the seasons. We're in season 2 of the podcast, and it's always a privilege to talk to leaders, aspiring, emerging, or even veteran leaders with some tips and some things that might be helpful in your journey of personal growth and development. It might be organizational growth. It could be a faith-based organization. It could be an institution. It could even be just simply your household. You're looking to lay some foundation for growth to get better outcomes. I think that in order for things to get better, we have to identify the current state that they're in, appreciate the wins, but then also begin to address the challenges. And the book that I'm talking from, or what I'm speaking from, is a book soon to be released entitled Maximize Volume 2, and it's the Level Up edition, and it's designed to help people understand what it means to operate in personal leadership and impact their world. And that's a broad statement, so I'll take a few moments to kind of dissect that and break it down, and then I'll share a focus. In previous episodes, I talked about tenacity, I talked about grit, I talked about leading with hope. We even defined what it means to be a leader, what it means to have the responsibility of owning that role in the world in which we live. Right now, that's in question. Right now, when we look at leadership, whether it's at a political level, elected or otherwise, we question, what school of thought are these people coming from? When we look at the religious world or even corporate world, where there seems to be oftentimes fear or lack of integrity that causes people to make poor decisions or even generate negative or poor outcomes that impact scores and scores of individuals. You can think of industries, pharmaceutical industry, or perhaps the automotive industry, and you've seen the journey of even the entertainment industry. Those areas all are made up of people who've taken on the roles and functions of leadership, sometimes prepared and sometimes not. What I'd like to talk about is just staying in the race. What I want to talk about is, what does it take in order for an individual to endure, to practice, of course, tenacity and resilience. These are all attributes or traits of effective leaders talked about in the book. But making it personal, how do you stay in the race when you've either maybe tripped and fallen, or perhaps you are completely winded and you have no more energy left? I did share in a previous episode that I entered my first half marathon last year, and I was successful in completing that half marathon, but it wasn't because I ran or sprinted like a gazelle. It was because I decided to stay in the race. So, of course, by any means necessary, I did cross the finish line, but it was not without challenge. I prepared months and months out, as I'm preparing again this year for the same race. This time, I'd like to finish with a much better time than I did last year. But I'm pushing myself to stay in the race. To stay in the race. That's one of the chapters in the book. But I deal with the concept from this quote: distance over speed is like faith over fear. Now, being a man of faith and being deeply rooted in my faith in God and Scripture and understanding what it means to apply that principally in every area of my life, I think about how faith is substantive for us, and it's something that we hold on to as being evidence of things that we cannot see or haven't materialized yet, which means that our goals, our values, our objectives all stem from our ability to exercise and implement our faith. But faith that has been tormented by fear causes us to stop, or it causes us to move at a different pace than what we would potentially be able to move at. And it also causes us to make poor decisions as leaders, as just citizens. Fear is not our friend. So distance over speed in a race ultimately gets you the finish line. Faith over fear in a race also gets you to the finish line. And I'll tie those two together, but that's a quote that is found in this particular chapter. Now, staying in the race is a statement, but it's also a testimony. In that half marathon race that I participated in, I trained like everybody else. I'm considered a world class walker, not a world class runner, because most of my training was walking, fast speed walking, and a little jogging along the way. I never intended to run the race to beat someone else. My objective was to prove to myself that I would have the stamina to achieve this goal and to put within my quote unquote epitaph that I had completed a race of sorts. It's all figurative and it's proverbial because life is like a race. Some people look at the race by considering their starting point or their birth being when they're launched out of the blocks and then they run, passing opponents along the way. Whereas I look at life as a race, but it's a race in which we're all in and we're all at different paces, more like a marathon. And the marathon had hundreds of people in it. The marathon was made up of people from 8 to 80. I mean, there were people in the quadriplegic situations, wheelchair racers, and there were people of all walks of life in this race. And its similitude was like that of life. Over my span of years, I've seen lots of different people in this race. And I was inspired to run the race because it was for a worthy cause. It is for a worthy cause. With World Vision is the organization that I was running with or running under, along with some other team members from my local church. And we're attempting to raise money for clean water as well as some basic essentials for people around the world that have challenges, economic challenges, ecological challenges, or just societal challenges, the things that are talked about in the Bible that we who have the capacity, the ability to help someone else should do. So my motive was right. My intention to run the race was to help raise some money. And then also I had a selfish motive, and that was to get fit and to stay in shape, to keep my heart going at a higher rate than what people might average age would have typically clocked in at. So the goal is both personal as well as I would say ambitious for mission work, for mission work. And that's really how our lives should be tied. In this book, Maximize Level Up, I talk about the intersectionality of us fulfilling our calling and purpose in life and us being professionally or profoundly accomplished. When it's all said and done, at the end of the day, would we rather have the accolades of being successful as a business owner, or would we rather have the understanding that we were successful in fulfilling our purpose in life? That may have included owning a business or may have included winning an Oscar or perhaps winning a race. So back to the race that is life. The race is life, and all of us in the race are not opponents, but we are fellow runners. We are people who have all agreed to be a part of this process, and we're running for a cause, some cause. Like I said, I had mixed emotions because I was running for World Vision and walking for World Vision. Lots of walking, less running than walking, for World Vision, and it was to raise money. But that was based on me finding sponsors. That was based on me asking people to contribute. That was based on me making the investment myself as well into what it is that I believed in. So if we use the parallelism of life being like a race, often we look for those who will sponsor and stand with us in our endeavors. And we're not raising funds in the race of life. We're literally raising children. We're raising families. We're raising communities. We're raising businesses. We're literally doing what is necessary to fuel the world with what it needs in order to be, quote unquote, a pleasant place to live. So if you look at these proverbial examples that I'm giving you, staying in the race or being in the race and acknowledging that is the first step. Just acknowledging the fact that, hey, this is a race and I'm in it. And the race is not a race that people win because they're faster than someone else. Or because they're stronger than someone else, but the race is given to the person that endures. So staying in the race as a topic or as a title for this chapter came as a result of me jokingly saying that I was going to cross the finish line one way or the other, whether I had to walk, skip, crawl, jump, or roll across the finish line. And I got, a lot of teasing, from people who knew that I have some physical challenges that really should have prohibited me from being in the race. But my faith and determination to accomplish this was, like I said, both missional, but it was also personal. Overcoming a challenge, overcoming what someone said you could not do. And it wasn't from a competitive perspective as much as it was assessing or evaluating myself and choosing not to accept the limitations. If we're going to be in a race, we have to overcome the limitations. We have to overcome the limitations that may face us when it comes time to prepare. I can remember specifically preparing for the race by walking outside long distances in cold weather or in the rain, in the event that on the day of the race it was cold and it rained. And as Michigan weather would have it, it did just that, which means I was prepared for the cold. I was prepared for the rain, and I was okay with being wet and sweaty at the same time, being hot and cold at the same time. I know this is speaking to somebody's challenges that they might be facing in their corporate organization and maybe a nonprofit that you're working with, and the climate is not conducive right now for what it is that you'd like to accomplish. But think for a moment about what it means to stay in the race long enough to finish the race. To finish the race. Like I said, hundreds of people were in the actual race itself. But in that race, each of us had an individual goal or an objective to complete, to finish. You see, consistency will often outlast intensity. There were times in the race that I ran fast or jogged, trotted. And then there were times when I was walking sluggishly. There were times when it was so difficult to just kind of keep my hands, moving or my head up, because it seemed as if the closer I got to finishing the race, the more difficult it became. Now I can pause right there, or you can take a note and think about times in your life where you thought, I'm close to the end, but I don't feel like I can make it. I can remember feeling that. I can remember feeling some kind of way that I had more miles behind me than I had in front of me, but that's a lot of miles. A half marathon, that's a lot of miles. And I saw the sprinters and those who had gazelle-like characteristics and traits. I wanted to trip them along the way, but that probably wouldn't have been ethical, because jealousy doesn't get you across the finish line either. But I was somewhat. But I was also very proud to see people who faced challenges. One of the things that stood out to me, and I may have mentioned this in a broadcast before, was that in prepping for the race, we did a qualifier, kind of like a mock run of a smaller amount of miles. And I went out that early Saturday morning to go and try to do that. And I did, but something happened along the way. I was running by myself, even though there's a team of us who did the actual race, the half marathon. But during this pre-qualifier, qualified by doing up to half of it. And as I was on the mapped out course for the qualifier, I began to have recollection of that course being familiar. It was familiar to me because I remembered that course when I did a walk for life with the American Cancer Society. And I did that as a sign of victory of having overcome or having been healed from stage 3 lymphoma. Now, the interesting thing about that was that as I was preparing for this race that I did last year, it immediately took me back multiple years, more than 10 years ago, 12 years ago at the time of that race, when I had just overcome the diagnosis of a terminal disease. I was diagnosed with cancer, and I was at the end of stage 3, going into stage 4, and there's no cure for this particular disease, lymphoma. And the form of lymphoma I had came with a diagnosis of terminal illness. However, there was this hope inside of me, and still resides, that God's not done until God is done. So you're not done until God says you're done. So staying in the race has been my mantra for multiple years, from overcoming, abstract poverty, homelessness, as well as all types of challenges, to battling for my life. Battling cancer was not an easy thing, but being in the race of life brought about challenges that were not insurmountable. I'm here to talk about it, thank God. And I attribute the victory of that race, just like the half marathon, to just simply staying in the race. While on the race, I don't know how far in, I was actually at a sluggish pace, and I'm talking not the qualifier. Once I made the qualifier, I posted pictures and was excited about having done that much. But my gratitude grew during the day of the race, when I was actually walking past a crowd of people who was rooting on some folks who were ahead of me. Obviously, I didn't think they were talking to me, but they continued to cheer. They was like, "Come on, you can do it!" And they were calling the names of the people that were in the group ahead of me. I had my name on my shirt as well, and then they started calling my name like they knew me. I perked up, and I perked up. Not because I knew those people, but because somebody knew my name and encouraged me. This is all helpful for those of you in leadership when it comes to keeping people motivated to stay in the race, even when things might be a little bleak. So as I was, pepping, got a little more pep in my step. I got beyond that crowd, and I got beyond the cheerers, and I got beyond those people who were rooting me on, the cloud of witnesses that we talk about often. And it was just kind of a lonely stretch of space to the next landmark or to the next rest station or water station. And suddenly there was a team of walkers who came up beside me. And one of the young ladies was a timekeeper, and the other one was, I guess, the motivator of their team. And there were four of them. And as they were walking alongside, they said, "Hey, you want to run with us or walk with us?" I said, "Well, I'm not running the race. I'm walking." And the young lady, she said, "What's your name?" And I said, "My name's Terence." And asked her name. She said, "Oh, my name is Destiny." And of course, something just kind of sparked in me that Destiny would be walking alongside of me in a journey that I reflectively could have just given up and said, "Hey, I made it as far as I can go, and I need to give up." But I did not give up because the cloud of witnesses and those cheering me on, but then also the anticipation of the next rest stop. But then God sends destiny. I believe that somebody in our lives has been sent intentionally to not just motivate us, but to inspire us along the way. And so, her and the other young lady had a system. It says, "We're going to walk a few moments and we're going to run a few moments and we're going to pace this thing out." And we've been, since the beginning of the race, pacing it, and we happened upon you. And it's interesting because in the race of life, the same thing happens. There are people on their journeys, just like you're on your journey. And then when you meet up, purpose and destiny somehow ignites. My purpose being fulfilled, destiny coming along. And there were others in this group, and we all just started out together, jogging a little bit. And there was a countdown to how many minutes we could jog. And then we would walk. And then we would jog, and then we would walk. And I can attribute the success of me completing this race to destiny. Not only does destiny mean an inevitable end or a destination of sorts that's been focused on for a period of time, it's even broader than that. Destiny really has no end. Destiny can be passed on to someone else. Hopefully, I'm inspiring somebody right now to run a race or to face an insurmountable challenge and know that as long as you pace it properly, you can win. And you're accompanied by people who are, yes, timekeepers, but also those who will inspire along the way. Notice I said inspire and not motivate. Motivation is something that has to happen from the inside, because if somebody can move you or motivate you, they can also stop you or discourage you. But if you are inspired from the inside and then motivation occurs, then you're in control of that, you and the God you serve. Think for a moment about this as I begin to wrap this up. Consistency outlasts intensity, is what I said, but distance often matters more than speed. Distance matters more than speed. How much further was I to getting close to my quote unquote finish line? And it wasn't that far. The point was that there was somebody who, by, I don't want to say coincidence, but by divine providence, came alongside and helped me to go to the finish line. It had even gotten to the point in the race, Carol was the other person's name, gotten to the race where I became sluggish and couldn't keep up even with the walk, run system. And it was a lot. Let me tell you, this individual said, "Come on, you can do it," or "I'll wait with you." I said, "No, go ahead with the rest of the group." And she was like, "No, I believe that I'm supposed to walk with you." She was a woman of faith. In fact, everybody in that one little small micro group were all people of faith. And we were kind of sharing our belief in the fact that, God had ordained for us to be there for that day, and it was for a worthy cause. And while we were distracting ourselves with testimony, we were finishing the race. We were literally getting closer and closer and closer. And final bend and coming toward the finish line, I could hear people cheering. There were people at the end of the finish line. I know that were cheering for me. My wife was there, some family members, relatives, other folks that I know. And honestly say that I felt like I couldn't go any further. In this race, my legs became like lead, and I could actually feel gravity pulling me forward, almost to fall to the ground. But somehow, both Carol and Destiny kept saying, "Come on, you can do it. Keep going, keep going, keep going." Now, Carol was the person who, when I got close to the finish line and just kind of slumped my shoulders and began to walk really, really slow, gave me a nudge. She pushed me. She literally pushed me and says, "Come on, don't give up now. You're there." And this message or this chapter, this episode might be that little push that you need in order to get through the finish line. Because if you've run this far, you may as well finish. I've always said that God never brings you this far just to bring you this far. You've never saw somebody who accomplished just to have accomplished. No, they accomplished to go on to the next thing. So whether you are a CEO, you are a manager, perhaps you are a team lead, perhaps you're an emerging leader who wants to be a leader at some point, stay in the race. Keep running, keep moving. I believe that you're going to find a Destiny or a Carol to push you over the finish line or to encourage you to set certain rhythms and pace. I believe that eventually, if you stay in the race, perseverance that's already marked out for us will cause us to fix our eyes on the prize, on the finish line. I was so inspired by having finished that race. I hope that there were no pictures based on my expression by the time of finishing. And even if there were, I don't know who that man is. I would honestly say that I was inspired to want to do it again. So I'll be signing up for another half marathon, and I'll be preparing for it. I'll be doing whatever it takes to condition and to not only finish my race, but also encourage somebody else to stay in the race. I'm always excited that you decided to tune in or to listen to this podcast here with the Growth Exchange. I'm Dr. Tarence Lauchié. Let's grow. This episode is sponsored by Speak Media Services, where we believe everyone deserves the opportunity to capture and preserve their unique stories. You're not just another number in the crowd. Your individuality matters. Our intimate photography and videography services are tailored to your vision and budget, ensuring your essence shines through. Allow us to help preserve the moments that mean the most. With our support, you'll create cherished keepsakes to treasure for years to come. Speak Media Services, your story, your way. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Growth Exchange. I'm Dr. Tarence Lauchié. It's been a pleasure to have these conversations and dialogues with our guests. If you notice, one thing we all share in common, and that is the ability, the desire, and the potential to grow and maximize our fullest potential. So keep tuning in. Share this with somebody, like it, maybe even invite somebody. And if you'd like to be a guest, contact us with the information that's here and available for you. Let's grow.